exploring how sports today influence politics, business culture, and even technology. It is not just about the thrill of competition or the glory of victory. It is about how sports create opportunities, forge identities, and redefine possibilities. On a global scale, from the rise of the data analytics in cricket to the geopolitical stakes of the Olympics, from grassroots football movements to the power of brand endorsements, this book offers a compelling look at the intersection of sports and society. It raises questions like how does sport drive economic change and national pride? How are the athletes shaping global narratives beyond the field? By blending storytelling with critical analysis, Boundary Lab gives us an insider's view of sports as a global laboratory where innovation, influence, and ideology collide. So, without further ado, let's unveil this remarkable book, Boundary Lab, inside the global experiment called sports. The session starts with the panelist Nandan Kamath, a leading figure in sports law, governance, and athlete representation. Nandan Kamath is not just the author of Boundary Lab, but also a pivotal voice in shaping the legal and commercial frameworks of sports in India. Through his work, he has championed athlete rights, policy reforms, and ethical governance in sports. Amrit Mathur, a veteran sports administrator and writer, he has been at the heart of Indian sports management, having worked extensively with teams, federations, and government bodies. He brings invaluable insights into the evolution of sports administration, policy, and business. We also have as our moderator Shlok Chandra. He's a senior standing counsel for the Income Tax Department, handling sensitive and important cases for the CBDT and Delhi High Court and Supreme High Court. He is an alumnus of National Law School Bangalore. He was part of Justice L. Nageshwara's Rao's team and drafted the constitution of the Indian Olympic Association and finalized the constitution of All Indian Football Federation. He also serves as a member of IOA's POSH committee. He represents numerous para-athletes and athletes in their disputes with sport bodies. As Billie Jean King once said, sports are a microcosm of society, whether it's gender, equality, nationalism, technology, or the power of sponsorships. Sports reflect the world we live in and the world we aspire to create. Without further ado, I would now transfer the mic to our moderator, Shlok, and we can start the session. A huge round of applause, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you. Before I introduce the book, I would like to say a little about the author. Mr. Nandan Kamath was also an avid cricketer. He captained the Karnataka under-16 team. And then when he went to Oxford, he was also captaining the side there. And one of the headlines, which he mentions in the book, was there in the paper when he, had won the man of the match, was Commit the hour, commit the man. Kamath the hour, Kamath the man. So that was, very interesting. And he's continued his passion with sports. He may not be playing it as actively professionally, but he's a leading figure in, sports law. So one question I would like to ask you is that tell us a little about how you got about writing this book, because before someone starts writing, it's always the the germination of the thought that I want to write a book on this subject. So how did that come about?
Thanks, Shlok, for that. Very happy to be here at the festival. It's a question I actually asked myself because I just got started. So I would be reverse engineering the answer a little bit. But to some extent, there were lots of thoughts. I've worked almost 20 years in Indian sport now in many different capacities. as a lawyer, as someone who runs a couple of non-profits. I've played sport. Now I'm a parent of aspiring young athletes as well. So in all of these different capacities, I've seen sport from very different positions and lights. So those thoughts were a little bit unformed, but the commitment to action was actually during COVID. I had a chance to teach a course at the National Law School on sports and society, and I felt like there were very interesting themes that were coming up. Two ways to clarify your thoughts. One is to teach, the other is to write. And it was a process of actually clarifying and connecting a lot of my thoughts about Indian sport. So it's semi, I would say, professional autobiography, but also researched, looking at different concepts and trying to build connections which are accessible to everyone. So it's not a sports law textbook, it's not a law textbook at all. It's about trying to bring the meaning of sport to the common person, and to some extent to explain it to myself as well.
So, Mr. Mathur, any initial thoughts you would like to share with the audience about, how you enjoyed reading this book and what was your takeaway from this book?
Thanks, Shlok. Nandan explained why he wrote it. You asked him a question and he explained that there was thought going on in his mind. He sees sports on different sides. So he ultimately decided to write because of COVID, to put those things on paper and clarify things in a proper, organized manner. So that is the process. But I have seen the product. The product is outstanding. It's a very major, it's a significant work on sport and Indian sport. So the point he makes in the book is that sport has changed, it's evolved. It was somewhat a simple activity earlier. Now it's a complex, professional activity, specialized. There are multiple stakeholders involved in it. So because of this changing nature of sport, which has a social, economic, cultural, political impact, various issues arise. So anybody who's interested in sport or involved in sport needs to understand sport and the issues that have arisen. So that's what he's done in an outstanding manner. He's identified the issues, deconstructed them, explained them, not only from a common sense, practical point of view, but also giving the legal side to many of the issues. So I think ultimately it's a tremendous book, and it's of great. It's not a novel. It's not one narrative. So it's been sliced. Indian sport has been sliced into different pieces, and each slice actually analyzed with, I think, great insight. That's the value of the book.
And even the chapterization, the names which he's given the chapters, those are tremendous. There's one chapter on whether Dhoni should have a copyright over whether he should own the helicopter shot. So, on that chapter, if you can just tell us a little that how did you come about this heading and what are you trying to cover in this chapter?
Yeah, so the background to the larger book is, there was that quote, right? Sport is a microcosm of society. And in fact, I wanted to take that a little bit further because my belief has been a lot of the concepts and a lot of the book is about specific concepts. It could be fair play, it could be autonomy, it could be creativity. And to me, we are actually introduced to a lot of these concepts when we're young through sport and play. So even things like power and sharing, what is fair and what is unfair. At one point, one very famous sports law professor said, we all learn our concepts of justice from very young age by playing, when we play. And my belief is that organized sport actually continues that relationship, our relationship with these very core concepts. We think that actually sport is just a reflection of society. But my postulation in this book, but also through my work, is that actually sport can lead society. So it can be upstream of society. And its unique characteristic, and the main unique characteristic is its universal nature. Very few things in the world do we agree on the rules across the world being the same. So wherever you play a particular sport, the rules remain the same, whatever the political configuration, whatever the demographic. So that gives us a chance to address issues with the law remaining static. So the relationship between morals and markets play out in very interesting ways, which is what the theme of the book is. And in this case, why do I call it a laboratory? Because my belief is that even before something comes up as a major social issue, sport has actually encountered it somewhere. because the many anomaly in the system, it could be in South Africa, you have a woman who people think is a man and is playing in women's sport. All of world sport has to address that because you're actually playing a common competition. Now the particular topic on Dhoni and the helicopter shot is around sort of an exploration of intellectual property. So one of my early interests was intellectual property law, its relationship with technology, and we've always been told this concept that without intellectual property, which is ownership of what we create, people will not create anything, right? But sport actually shows us something completely different. You set up the incentives in other ways. There is a human desire to create, to innovate. And there are other types of incentives that might drive you. Today, Dhoni is associated with the helicopter shot, and probably for the next 20 years he will be. So there's some things of just being recognized as author, the act of creation, the act of giving to a public domain, which play out. And this chapter is really about that battle between what makes people create and what keeps sport going. Because every time someone innovates, someone else may innovate further and build on that. To me, Dhoni's helicopter shot is the product of maybe Kapil Dev's Nataraj shot, Ranji's leg glance, Kapil Dev's Ravi Shastri's chapati shot, and he's made something more out of all of those. If you took it out of commerce, maybe the next shot that has to emerge would be some other type of shot, might not.
Because there would be somebody who would have played the the reverse sweep for the first time. There would be somebody who would have done explored reverse swing for the first time. But it's not as if there are other people in the future who have not become better at it.
And exactly, and I think a great example is the Fosbury flop in high jump.
Right.
So Dick Fosbury, for the first time, decided instead of going, there were many different techniques to do the high jump, but he was the first one to go backwards.
Right.
And it is still called the Fosbury flop. For many years, he was the only one doing it, but very soon other people caught up. The person who holds the world record is not Dick Fosbury. So someone else came very soon after him and did it better. So the person who innovates might not be the person who uses it best as well. And there is some social value left out in all of our things. It could be in pharmaceuticals, it could be in writing, it could be in music. The person who does it first is not necessarily the best at doing it. The longest standing Olympic record is in the high jump. And it is not by Dick Fosbury.
See, normally when you talk of patenting something, you are creating an economic incentive for it and giving the benefit of creating something. Now, obviously it can't work in sport. You can't say nobody else can play the helicopter shot. Nobody else can play the volley as Federer did.
Nobody else can do a banana kick.
Yeah, so that can't work. You can't have sport being sort of restricted by these kind of laws. But at the same time, the person who's created this, whether it's Dhoni, whether it's he's mentioned Kapil Dev, Ravi Shastri, whoever, he gets credit for it. People remember him for the particular sort of change or the improvement or the new shot that he's played. So people, as he said, will remember Dhoni for the helicopter shot. People remember Dilshan for the scoop. So people remember Ranji, maybe 100 years ago he played the leg glance. I don't know whether he actually did or somebody else also did, but it's got stuck. So we all remember him. And that's the legacy. So there might not be an economic, commercial incentive or a reward for a particular improvement, but there is a legacy side.
And in the book, I call that you may not get royalties, but you will be treated as sport royalty. So, I mean, forever you will be remembered.
There is something very poignant you write in the book, that a large section of, especially in the context of India, a large section of population may never have had the experience of playing sport because of the socio-economic conditions. So in that light, where there is a large section of the country which suffers from poverty, should India be aspiring, and this is something that you do touch upon in the book, should India be aspiring to host the Olympics, because there is large capex which goes into it, and even in and another point I want you to touch is that in the context of Commonwealth Games, we've had great infrastructure in Delhi, but some of the cost points, the user fee is quite high and out of reach for the common man. So is that something that we need to address, that the common man can't go and play badminton or play squash and still we have these heavy expenditures? So is that an area of concern?
Yeah, absolutely. So the way I look at the Olympics is a wedding ceremony. But what is the purpose of a wedding ceremony is to actually sanctify a marriage. And the health of that marriage is what happens before, the relationship you build, and what happens after. So you want a long and healthy marriage. And here what we want is a long and healthy marriage with sport. So the event is a big top event. Lots of things culminate. It perhaps helps to, from a rhetoric perspective, bring the system together. We have a very sort of disparate system that isn't necessarily working together. The federation, state government, central government, corporate enterprise. It's possible that the Olympics will be that one North Star where everyone works actively towards this. But it needs a lot of work before to actually set the ground for what you call the legacy of an event. You cannot justify an Olympics simply based on the particular event. Most Olympics cost 14, 15 billion, huge gaps between expenditure and revenue that might come from sponsorship. There are a lot of projections that come out of improved tourism, improved brand, but very often they'll stay at the level of projection, very difficult to attach lots of benefits to that. But the benefit can come if you actually work on the legacy plan of building a much stronger relationship of the general population with sport and physical activity. Not everyone needs to be playing squash, tennis, other things. Just living a more active life. Very few Olympic hosts have been successful at that. It would need a tremendous effort here, but is it a effort worth fighting? Absolutely. It is a stark reality that today 75% of Indian adolescents do not get enough physical activity on a weekly basis. And at adult levels, that's 40% for females and males.
Yes.
So we have a very limited relationship, forget about with sport, with just moving our bodies. Can the Olympics become the lightning rod to change that relationship? It can, but the amount of effort that needs to be done with that, and not just with an event management mindset, it's a change mindset. I think there is something to the Olympics, but if it is built as a much larger package.
I have one question for you, Mr. Mathur. In the book, there's a chapter on that does Virat Kohli play for India? So the question which I have for you is on cricket administration. That in the last 10-15 years, have we dealt with the issue of conflict of interest adequately? So Mr. Mathur, your thoughts, and then we can have Mr. Kamath's thoughts.
Can I go back to the earlier question?
Yes.
Olympics. What Nandan said is right. If you look at the Olympics from a sports perspective, maybe not.
Right.
Is it going to trigger a change in the way we look at sport, the way we play sport?
Right.
Is it going to benefit sport in a big manner in that? Does it make sense in the terms of cost and benefit? Of course not. The cost is too high, the returns are too weaker. But there is a counter argument to stage an event of this kind, because you can't look at it only in terms of cost, not only, or in terms of tourism or people coming in. There's something larger to it. So it may be a matter of national identity. You want to project yourself on the global stage. You want to, it can lead to a major trigger for improvement of infrastructure, for various other things which a city would need, and this becomes the reason to do it. So there are multiple reasons for the Olympics, but I think lately most countries have realized that it's too expensive. Too expensive. It doesn't even deliver the economic benefits which it is supposed to do. Paris was a great example. That just to fill you in, a year before Paris, you couldn't get a hotel. You couldn't get maybe an airline ticket. But the so-called influx of tourism never happened. So during the games, Paris was like a khali city. Hotels were, vacant. The flights got cancelled because there was nobody coming in. So financially, economic point of view, it's a disaster.
Probably a Coldplay concert will do better for the economy than hosting the Olympics.
We should have multiple sort of concerts in whatever year. 10 concerts during 20 city tour of India, maybe financially that's a much better deal.
If I can just add to that, the argument is often made that we are the only one of the BRICS countries that has hosted neither the Olympics or the FIFA World Cup. Now, is that a good reason to start saying we should host it? To just say, okay, we're peers with this? The answer is no. If we come at it from a place of inadequacy, I think it's the wrong reason. If we come at it from a point of this is something that means something to us and we can make sense of it, absolutely go for it, but it has to be gone for wholeheartedly and without looking back. So I think with no regrets.
I think one final point on this. You try and host the Olympics when you have certain sort of strength as a sporting nation. You know, at Paris, 84 countries won medals. We were position 71. And we were aspiring to be the top 10 in the world. Top 10 is 33 medals. So are we getting there? Are we close to getting there? Or are we at the bottom of the ladder? So if you are at the bottom or close to the bottom, does it make sense for you to project yourself as a sporting nation? So I think that's a fundamental question. You can't have an Olympics and end up with 7 medals or 8 medals. That would be a bigger disaster. Forget the cost, forget the fact that it is supposed to be a sporting event and you are way down in terms of where countries stand.
So once performances improve, one argument could be that you want the kids of your nation to see the top athletes in flesh and blood. But that would be when you reach a certain level.
Also, I think if the intention is to strengthen sport and make India a better sporting nation, there are much better ways of doing it than to hold the Olympics.
So now coming back to the question on cricket administration and what's the journey been in the last decade, in terms of the Lodha committee, the management of the IPL, the issues of conflict of interest in cricket. So if you can just touch upon your thoughts on that, then we'll come to Mr. Kamath for his thoughts.
You're the expert, aren't you? You're the expert. No, I think, listen, with any sport, and especially cricket in India, which is sort of evolving, changing so rapidly and with so much commercial, the commerce is so core of cricket in India. There will be challenges, there will be friction, there will be uneven developments, and which will actually challenge governance. So we've seen that play out after the IPL. Because of whatever has happened, the courts interfering, the courts deciding on a constitution for the BCCI. So I think there has been a way forward, but very often what is in the letter and in the book is not actually how it plays out. So there are gaps, but I think these will continue. And I don't think there's any answer to this. I don't think there's an answer from an external agency to come regulate and control sport. I think it has to be internal. And it has to be responsible governance, there has to be accountability, there has to be transparency, and which holds for cricket, it holds for every sporting organization. It holds for kabaddi, it holds for volleyball, it holds for sailing, it holds for rugby. So I think it has to be just that desire for people running the federation to run it in a manner which is good governance. And also I think pressure from everybody to the outside to ensure that it happens. It might look a very ideal kind of situation, sab sudhar gaye, sab acha kaam kar rahe hain, and there are people who are keeping a watch, but I don't see any other way of ensuring good governance and accountability.
Yeah, I think this is a broader question for all of global sport. It's not limited to a particular sport or a particular country. We have not yet figured out the best mode for governing sport in general. Sport, like art and culture, was very much patronage based till a certain point. Globalization of sport was the first trigger, where you have the Olympics, the modern Olympics coming back, the desire to connect different countries. The movement was built outside government, with the sort of support of government, implied recognition, but a separate movement outside of sport. So moving from that, where kings and other people patronize sport with money and other types of support, to a model where of theoretical self-governance. There are many balances to be fought, right? So who governs? We are not, as all citizens of India, we are not electing members of the BCCI. You're building proxy systems to enable that to happen at regular basis, put qualified people in power. That is not an easy job as well. So globalization, the other thing that happened is the professionalization of sport, where suddenly money came into what was theoretically a voluntary activity. You organize an event, you put together something, everyone does it out of goodwill, you do it for 2 weeks in the year and you move on to your regular job, versus something that is a churning machine. Week after week there are matches, you have to deal with broadcasters, sponsors, athletes want something. It's suddenly a very multi-stakeholder ecosystem where there are no right answers. It's a very dynamic system. You have to make sure that everyone wants something from sport, but it's a moderated taking. So you take away, it's like a public park, right? So you can come and enjoy it, but don't destroy it. So you come and give something if you want to take something away. And that role of governance is finding that balance. Are we able to find the right? The challenge comes from all of these being what you would call monopoly bodies. There's only one way to become a professional cricketer is to play through the BCCI system. Only one way to play football is through the AIFF system. So, like the railways is a monopoly, these are what you would theoretically call natural monopoly. But you need that monopoly to be working, because there are no options, there's no competition. There are now ways in which you can compete perhaps with some of these systems.
And in fact, you do need a monopoly, because if you don't have one NSF per sport, then there would be conflicting voices. You know, who would select the Indian team for badminton if there's not one badminton association of India?
Also, Shlok, issue of administrative governance challenges is not patented by India.
Right.
It happens everywhere. It's happened. We've seen it in the International Olympic Committee. We've seen it play out in FIFA. There have been huge scandals, huge controversies, huge issues of governance, ethics, integrity, etc. So, as Nandan said, it's a challenge which is global. It's a challenge to every sporting body. And there's no right wrong. You have to dynamic situation and you have to find the right balance. Being a monopoly, to run a commercial, hugely commercial exercise, multiple stakeholders, at the same time being
There's one.
I just want to add there, I think there's no shortage in our country of competent people to run bodies. So many people say, maybe there's a deficit in leadership. There is no lack of competent people to run these bodies. The things that are a challenge right now are the incentives and the structures, the systemic structures of how to gain power. So it's about winning elections, it's about taking other people along, giving them something in return. So it's a lot of give and take to actually get into a position. And then once you're in there, why are you in there in the first place? It's a question we often debate of why do people want to be president or secretary of a federation? And a lot of it is actually for private taking. And that comes back to your question on conflict of interest. What is the intent with which you're in that position? Is it to use the tickets? Is it to, in some sense, commercialize, make sure that your commercial enterprise also gets some contracts? We see that across multiple different sports. The incentives are structured in such a way that there's no one who's going to be able to disturb that very easily. So if you get the people with a slightly less private mindset but a more public-spirited mindset in, competent people, the system has to promote that. Right now, the structures aren't such that autonomy is promoted. Autonomy is very often promoted, but it's used as a shield rather than as an effective ability to actually deliver.
There's a very interesting anecdote in the book that in the early 2000s, Kumble and Srinath were administrators in Chinnaswamy in Bangalore, and there was a demand by the municipal corporation for 450 tickets or 450 VIP tickets, but they only ended up giving 250 regular tickets. But what happened as an aftermath in that is that the local administration after the match did not clear the ground, did not clean up the ground, which led to a huge problem. So what Mr. Kamath writes in the book is that the reason why sometimes in these national sporting federations you have people with power who are heading them is because the doors that they open for the NSFs, that sometimes there may be a player who has to visit China, but the approval may not come through. But if there's a powerful person who's in the administration, then he can liaise with the Ministry of Home Affairs and open some doors. The visa may come a little quicker. So these are real problems. In your book, there's some very interesting chapters that you write. So there's one where the issue of whether the heart rates of athletes can be displayed to the public. So if you can just talk about that.
Yeah, it's a chapter that I wrote after watching actually the Tokyo Olympics. So some of you may have seen it, but the archery event at the Tokyo Olympics and even this most recent Paris Olympics.
While
While the archers were in position, they actually showed their live
data.
heart rate
So
data.
you could see as they got nervous
as they went up, down, and other things like that.
To me,
Why do I call this a laboratory? It's a laboratory of what all of our lives might start looking like. How much of our inner life, there is an inner life we lead. How much of it should remain private at all costs? How much of it is available for the entertainment of others? What do we benefit? The spectators get into the sport, they love seeing someone nervous, overcoming their nerves, maybe even getting nervous and tanking. There's a human connection there, but at what cost? The fascinating thing there is, one, they took the consent of all the athletes. Most of the athletes agreed to it. But how do you think that they actually got the data? Most people, for a long time, they tested these types of bands, right, where you can get heart rate data, try and connect it to the TV setup. But finally, they did something where, with the Olympic partner, Panasonic, where the cameras was of such high broadcast quality that all the camera has to do is look into your eyes and look at the way the color of your face is changing, how often you're blinking. They get it down to within 1 to 2 heartbeats live data. So this is something that you don't even need the consent of. So as technology increases in its ability to get into your inner life, how much of your inner life requires your consent? The consent framework starts falling away, and it is a broader question we have to ask in the way that we also relate to our governance, the relationship of the state and the individual. And sport is at this forefront because the best technology in the world is being used in sport. Broadcast technology, tracking technology, performance technology. So it was a chapter which actually in some sense wrote itself. It's a big debate in Indian judicial life as well, of how much do we take from someone because we are giving them something. You may give someone rations, but you take away their biometrics.
Just because if elite sportsmen are public figures, does it mean that the common man has a right to know their heart rate?
Possible, yeah, and that's a broader question. Do I have the right to be entertained and the right to become a product because you're playing into this?
Right.
Not that our archers are paid anywhere close to our cricketers,
Right.
but that is a bigger question of the balances between the norms we're trying to create, the commerce of it. Maybe at a certain price we'll be willing to give away that because it sort of helps our sport. And when most people were surveyed, they said, if it helps my sport, I'm happy to give a little bit because it makes it more entertaining. People all over the world get excited about my sport, and maybe that will give me better opportunities. Again, a very interesting insight. Me as a lawyer, I might say, no, don't give it away, but people are willing to actually do something for the growth of their sport, which is also very interesting.
So on a slightly unconnected point, and I'd like Mr. Mathur to take this question. In tennis, sometimes women athletes are told that, you have this sort of a dress attire to wear because that will increase viewership. So is that fair game? Is that something sports should worry about, that your attire should be like this, or you should wear this or not wear this because this will impact the viewership? Is that something which is fair?
I don't know of any tournament which sort of encourages women to dress in a particular way to increase viewership. I don't think it exists. If it does, at least I don't know.
Right.
But various tournaments have a dress code.
Right.
For instance, the most famous being Wimbledon.
That you have to wear white.
You can only play if you wear white.
Right.
Many players have protested and said this is unfair, it's restrictive, why should we do that?
Right.
The Wimbledon answer is very simple. These are our rules. If you want to play, you abide by them. If
Right.
you don't, then don't play.
Right.
So it's fine. I think each big tournament, whether it's a golf tournament or a tennis tournament, also is a brand. And they want to protect and maintain that brand. And that's why they've survived and they've grown and they've become bigger. And that's why they are the brand they are.
Right.
So I think it's okay for
a dress code to be there, or for a tournament to say that these are the rules and the terms and conditions of a tournament.
Listen, but sometimes it's said without it being codified. Nowhere in cricket rules does it say that you play in whites.
Right.
But that's the tradition. Cricket has been played in whites for 200 years. And forget sport. Let's take a cultural club, for example.
Right.
Clubs have rules that you can only you have to come wearing certain kind of dress. Maybe a kurta pajama is not allowed, slippers are not allowed,
Right.
or you need a collared t-shirt to enter. So I think it's fair for any organization to create its own rules, and it's for people who are participating or members to adhere. And if they don't, it's their choice.
Right.
So I think that's a very interesting question and a continuing evolving one. For example, beach volleyball is one of the sports which this
Right.
issue has come up with, is
Right.
making people, women in particular, play in bikinis.
Right.
Now, the question to ask is, does it contribute to the sport, the sporting element, or is it
Right.
just in some sense for the sake of the visual appeal to spectators?
Right.
They found that in, I think, volleyball, it is the most least restrictive for movements,
Right.
and that becomes a sporting attire. It's not entertainment attire.
Right. So there's some science
There
behind.
has to be some science.
behind
It cannot be just for the sake of
Right.
sort of people watching the sport.
Right.
But there's some very interesting trends that have come from this, and picking up from what Amrit talked about, particularly as we've got more and more aware of women's sport.
Right.
So, for example, in the Premier League, there's Women's Premier League as well.
Right.
There's a strong movement to have women stop playing in white shorts.
Right.
Because many of them might be menstruating.
Right.
It can become a serious issue. So you'll see a lot more women playing in black shorts.
Right.
And I think there is an evolution to be more sensitive to the realities of athletes.
Right.
Fascinatingly, at Paris, the Japanese team, it was one or two of the teams, they actually built new clothing technology to prevent the women's clothing from being infrared scanned.
Right.
What they found is that the people were using infrared cameras
Right.
and actually invading the privacy of athletes without their knowledge. So many photos had gone viral, just in some sense, photos of athletes who were clothed, but they appear to be not clothed any longer. So there's lots of effort being put in to make sports safer, more gender sensitive,
Right.
and to build much more awareness.
So on that note, in your book you say that sports is like a orchard, where there are multiple trees, but some fruits may be poisonous. So, is sexual harassment in sport something that we have tackled sufficiently, or do we need to get better at tackling sexual harassment in sport?
As the posh committee chair or member, I think the question should perhaps be, should I answer the question? But obviously, this has been a major issue with wrestling and other things. But the reality is sexual harassment happens all the time, everywhere,
Right.
not just in sport. But the beauty of sport is how it has foregrounded this. There are similar issues going on in offices, it could be in government departments, it
Right.
could be everywhere. But the reality is sport has something pure about it that we all care so deeply that we're able to foreground issues like what happened in wrestling in a way that we should be having these conversations across the board in corporate India, in
Yes.
non-corporate India as well.
Yes. Especially in the in the dynamics between coaches and young athletes, that is something which the fact that people are now openly speaking up is something very commendable. And in the chapter, there's one chapter that you address about refund of tickets. That's something which everyone grapples with. That under what circumstances should the price that you've paid for a high-cost ticket be refunded to you? So if you can just touch a little on that.
Yeah, so it's very fascinating. This is under contract law. Perhaps not so much of an issue in India because most tickets you can't buy. They're all given away as gifts.
Right.
But for the tickets you do buy, and
Right. Right. I mean, if you've got a
but
if you've got a pass, then
it's a very interesting question which actually came up in the courts. I think it was the Madras High Court. Someone bought a ticket. Match was washed out completely. Not even a single ball was bowled. And the Tamil Nadu Cricket Association said, too bad, it's your risk. So the question is, in all of these contracts where there is, a ticket is actually a contract. It's a standard form contract.
Right.
And there's a higher standard for standard form contracts because I'm not getting the right to negotiate. You're just paying the price,
Right.
the terms of the ticket on the back. So what we have reached a point in India is that if a single ball is bowled, you get no refund. So one ball is bowled and it rains,
Right.
no refund. If not a single ball is bowled, you're entitled to a full refund.
Right.
You have to go back and provide the ticket.
But I thought
But-
ECB has probably a different.
So very interesting. ECB, West Indies and others actually have a graded system.
Right.
So one ball is not enough. If it's just one ball, there's a 10 overs, 30 overs, 50 overs. Is there a result on the day? So much more advanced ways of thinking about delivering
Right.
value to the fan.
Right.
And actually that in some sense captures the spirit of how the fan is just seen as a consumer, not necessarily seen as a rights holder.
Right.
It's a broader debate to have and perhaps for another day.
I think it's quite interesting about the refund rules of the work in different countries
Right.
and for different matches.
Right.
For instance, the IPL, if you have 5 overs each, then it's considered to be a match. So obviously, if you have 5 overs each, there's no refund.
There's no refund.
Sometimes, according to one ball being bowled, or sometimes there's no refund, even if not a single ball is bowled.
Right.
England has this graded thing. Beyond 20 overs, there's no refund. So if there's a day's play and 20 overs have been bowled,
Right.
then nobody gets a refund.
Right.
And from 0 to 5 to 15 to 20, he said there's graded
Right.
refund rules.
It includes if you, there's no match, but you go and have lunch, there's a value attached to lunch as well. So
Right, right.
much more advanced
Right.
system.
And this could be a real-time problem in different sports. Like you may pay for a very expensive boxing match, which ends in a knockout in 2 seconds. And someone may say that, look, by the time I got my seat down, the match was, the game was over.
But we also have to recognize that whether the match happens or not, a lot of money is spent and effort is spent on actually setting up the match.
Right.
So the organizer needs some credit as well. If all you did was 100% refund,
Right.
how do you put up the stands? You put up, prepare the venue, and not all sports might have the sort of the commercial backing of like a sport like cricket.
Let me give you an interesting incident. In the first year of the IPL, I was part of the Delhi franchise, and we organized a match, and it got rained off.
Right.
So no play, and we'd sold out all tickets or
Right.
given out a lot of tickets as passes. So technically we are open to refund, but the problem with us was even we didn't know which ticket we'd given out free and
Right.
which was actually paid for.
Correct.
So it was a huge issue
Right.
that technically anybody could have walked in with a ticket and asked for a refund,
Right.
and maybe he didn't pay for it.
Right.
But as it happened, very few people turned up to ask for a refund.
Right.
So it became manageable. But had the people with tickets turned up, we would have been in a great mess.
So typically in India, when you go for a refund, you are normally told that you'll be adjusted in the next time or next match. You can use this for the next.
Yeah,
match.
because,
Typically,
see,
refunds are not easy to come by.
When the rules are not very clear, then you do all those things. But I think now, as the IPL has evolved over 18 years, people are much smarter. Even the people who are organizing the matches,
Right.
and I think the ticket holders also. And there have been instances where refunds have been done.
Right.
Coming back to one more thing which was discussed earlier about why important people are on federations, they get things done and they get permissions and approvals and things.
Right.
Running an IPL game is like one big shadi. There are hundreds of authorities which have to give you clearance.
Right.
And the system is that you apply separately for permissions.
Okay. Just 2-3 quick questions.
You just apply separately for permissions. Ultimately, all those permissions have to land up with what is known as the licensing department of Delhi Police. And having received all other permissions, then the police gives you a license to stage an event.
Right.
Now, this is damn difficult.
Right.
And there have been instances we've got the license where 15 minutes before the toss. And technically they could have stopped the game.
Right.
But it doesn't come to that, but ultimately it becomes a negotiation for passes.
Right.
So if you deliver the right kind of passes, everything happens. But the one basic thing you understand when you're organizing a cricket match in Delhi is, if the SHO Daryaganj is on your side, you're okay.
Correct.
Nobody else matters. Because he's the one who's actually going to take a call. And if you want to disrupt your game, all he has to say is, sir, khabar aayi hai कि यहाँ पे कुछ security का issue है.
Correct. Correct.
That puts an end to everything. So if you have the SHO Daryaganj on your side, you're fine.
So some quick questions before we open it up for the audience. This one's for you. The best Indian cricket captain we've never had.
Best Indian cricket captain we never had. I mean, there's some recency bias, but maybe someone like VVS Lakshman.
Lakshman, Ashwin. And
Ashwin.
so for Mr. Mathur, the best cricket captain that you've seen in the last 30 years of the Indian cricket team. The one you rate high, the most highly rated captain as per you.
It's damn difficult, yeah, because I think each captain has taken Indian cricket forward in some way. Now it's very difficult to measure whether the advance made by A was better than the advance made by B. But I think if we go back in history, the first captain who really mattered in India was Tiger Patowdi. Before that, captains came and went, and nobody actually, gave them credit for the team.
Right.
For the first time, I think under Tiger, there was a direction to which way the team would, in the way the cricket was played. So
Right.
I think I have to give him credit for that.
Right. And so now we'll open it up for the audience. Yes. The mic.
Yes. We'll take one question.
Yeah. Please just stand and ask your question.
Okay, thank you so much. And I was really hoping for longer time for question. And yeah, my question is rather lengthy, so I'd like you to bear with me. And some really good insights by both of y'all in the last session as well, and I appreciate it. And first of all, I would like to thank the Bhopal Literature Festival for organizing all this, and this session itself, because this is where we start, I believe, and we don't really talk about sports and the relevant stuff in general, and this is where we should start from. We talk about governance and upping the game of sports in India. I think we don't really talk about it at all, and I'm so happy that in my hometown we are having this discussion where people could exchange thoughts and listen to real things that matter in sports and health. I think it's really good and nice to have Nandan here, and I know that you work diligently with your firm, Sports Society Accelerator, and we do also work with you, and it's just a fortunate thing that I'm here for my holidays and you're here as well. And I work for International Sports and Culture Association with Chol, and we do advocate for health enhancing physical activity. We do need to do that, I believe. And my first question, I would start from the first thing about the governance. As you mentioned that it's not about the governance like in general. It's maybe about structure, and the 50% of the WHO report says that the 50% of the country is inactive. Do you think that we do really need to actually go from bottom to the top and not top to the bottom? Because we're not really concentrating on grassroots level. We're always talking about elite sports. How do we get the medals more? And how do we provide them resources? You talked about the ethics and integrity as well. Yes, please. Yes.
Yeah, I think we just have a limited time, so maybe we can just add that question and we'll try and answer both.
My question is also similarly adding up with this the last. As you told about that more than 50% of adolescents are under malnutrition, and it is a high requirement for the sports to be impactfully enlarged in a wide way. So have you written something about like connecting with the government as a CSR or any kind of opportunity which will somehow help the youth for startups or for any kind of businesses like to get up into the sports as a entrepreneurship?
Yeah, I'll just answer that one first. The last two chapters are specifically about this, of how the public sector relates to the private sector, so how entrepreneurship, startups can actually get involved, and what our aspirations should be. To the other question on governance and structure, we had a session yesterday with Rahul Bose, and he talks about the role of the National Sports Federation. It has one role, it is to win. So you set up a structure where the National Sports Federation at the top has a single aspiration, which is winning, and I think that's right. But if that is the case, then you need a completely different structure for community youth sport, and that is not only sport related. It's actually an interrelationship between sport, health, productivity, and education. So actually, if you try and bring it under a single ministry, you're actually failing already in the intent. So what we need is a multi-sectoral thought process of how sport and physical activity merge into building the right, what we call active frameworks. So you start with the school. So how do you make a school more active, not just in physical form, but also conceptually? You're selling the relevance of physical literacy. You're trying to give people an attitude to remain active for life. You also think about colleges and their role in keeping people in sport and active. It's the biggest drop-off in India. Is at 15, 16, the opportunity cost of education is seen as significant. But also how we build our cities, how we do our transit. So you may want to transform, but how does you change the daily activities? We spend most of our time in school, in the workplace, or traveling. That's most of our waking hours. So how do we make those more active? And I think that's where governance comes in, from a multi-sectoral approach of using sport, using the magic of sport, but also seeing the other sort of day-to-day activities that we can engage in, and how do you make those spaces where we occupy our time more friendly and open to more active and active lives where we're moving more in a determined manner.
Do we have
Thank
time
you.
for more questions? Or
No, we have
Okay,
to wind up session.
okay.
I'm so sorry, sir.
Happy to answer some outside. Sir.
Yeah, we
this
will
can be-
have. We
yeah,
will
this can
have.
be taken up outside.
We will have Sir sitting in the lounge, so you can have a word with him. And also now we have a quick quiz question for the audience, which will in turn give them a book by Dale Carnegie. So, sir, if you would have some spot quiz question for them, any simple quiz question.
Okay. Many of you may be familiar with the BCCI logo, right? Do you know what the BCCI, it looks like the sun? Anyone know why it has dark blue and light blue in it?
So you have to raise your hands. Don't answer without raising your hands. We'll come and
Maybe
give you
Amrit
the
knows
mic.
answer. Don't know the answer?
Anyone in the audience?
Why are they dark blue and light blue? Maybe very difficult questions,
Yeah.
so no answers.
Yeah.
So you have the answer? It doesn't represent the sky. What is Amrit, anything you can come up with? Equal for sports. Okay, at the last Olympics, was there anyone who won more than one medal? If so, who?
Okay, we have hands. We can give it to the lady sitting in
Which
front.
one?
Manu Bhaker.
Okay. So, ma'am, please come up on the stage.
So the answer to the other question is actually the first president, I think a secretary or president, Anthony DeMello of the BCCI, blue is actually the Cambridge blue and the dark blue is the Oxford blue. So he saw those as standing for a certain spirit, and very likely it's not because of our flag or the Ashok Chakra in it. It is because of the BCCI. I don't know who made that decision, but it is the reality is it is not about our flag. It's actually college colors from Oxford and Cambridge.
Okay.
Nobody would know this.
So sorry, very difficult. and not even some people in the BCCI maybe. So.
Thank you so much. And we would present a book by Dale Carnegie to the winner of the quiz. A huge round of applause. Thank you so much. And now as we conclude this deeply enriching session, I would now like to request our co-founder member of the society, Mr. Brigadier Sanjay Agrawalji, to please come up on the stage and present the token of gratitude to our esteemed panelists. I would like the audience to know that Padma Shri Bhil artist Bhuri Bhai has created this artwork for BLF 2025 depicting the connection between nature, earth and the human being and the environment, the circularity inherent and imperative to our existence. To our incredible speakers, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom, creativity and your insights. It has deeply inspired us. This memento is a tribute to your contributions and a lasting impact of your words on our hearts and minds. Thank you so much.